have seen the torch of freedom pass from hand to yearning hand, and the vision of our fathers spread hope throughout this land, as the dream some fought and died for in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home. From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all. So with deep appreciation for the blessings of freedom that we know in this wonderful land of ours, I'm Dr. George Simon, welcoming you to another edition of Character Matters. This is the program where we talk about what I consider to be the defining issue of our time, the character crisis that we face, and that affects so many aspects of our daily lives, and is indeed at the root of so many of our troubles today. And this is what I have spent my career studying and dealing with and writing about on my blog at manipulative-people.com, and also at the counselingresource.com website. That's counseling with 2 L's, resource.com. And also in my books, In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People, Character Disturbance, the Phenomenon of Our Age, The Judas Syndrome, and How Did We End Up Here? And hopefully at the end of the summer, my 5th book, The 10 Commandments of Character, How to Lead a Significant Life. So if you want to join the conversation today, give us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. If you want to join the conversation, if you have a story you want to share, if you have a question you want to ask, something you think the audience will be interested in, or is there something you want to talk to me about, feel free to give us a call at 718-717-8296. We're going to be talking today about the series of articles that I've had going on what I affectionately call the 4th commandment of the 10 commandments of sound character development, namely respecting and acknowledging and embracing the truth. We do ourselves and everyone else a big disservice when we are not honest with each other and when we're not honest with ourselves. Perhaps the more insidious thing is when we are not honest with ourselves. And I've got some interesting takes that I want to discuss with you tonight about that whole phenomenon, and it might take me a bit to express my thoughts on this coherently, so if you'll bear with me, I'll do my best. And I also welcome your comments and your take on things, especially in view of the articles that I've been posting over the last couple of weeks. So as I said, if you have a comment you want to make or a question you want to ask, give us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. Well, I've been thinking about a lot of things lately, certain things in the news that have been really bothering me. I can't remember a time when I felt quite as troubled as I have by the social climate of the times. I think that we are in some very, very trying times. And things are not getting a heck of a lot better, and I think they're going to have to get worse on many fronts before they do get better. And what I'm witnessing is a great divide that has its roots in character issues. And, there have been some disturbing videos posted on YouTube and otherwise on Facebook and other social media. Been some disturbing videos of police officers in the act of arresting someone for an offense, sometimes a minor offense, and then things go horribly wrong. And someone who may or may not even be guilty of an offense at all ends up dead. And recently there's been some protest by minority groups that feel that this callous disregard for human life that we see play out sometimes, even in the enforcement of the law, is disproportionate along racial lines. And there may be some truth to that. But what really unnerves me more than anything else is the fact that that callousness is there. And I think way back to the incident many years ago with Rodney King, an incident that sparked some riots in the Los Angeles area. And I'm thinking of the circumstances that were involved there. We have an individual who was certainly acting a fool, who was acting horribly irresponsibly, cranked up on substances, and leading folks on a high-speed chase, racing through neighborhoods at ungodly speeds and being reckless. And then finally being chased down. And, when you look at the tapes, you can't help but think that these frustrated officers had their dander up. And they were going to teach this guy a lesson. So the level of violence that was used to subdue this person, once they finally got a hold of him, they were in rage, and they'd been put through the mill. And this, as they saw it, low-life criminal had just made their day miserable and endangered the public as well. They were going to teach him a lesson. And this kind of thing does happen. And of course you hear that most officers, I see we've got a call coming in. I'm going to go ahead and take this call. Hello, and welcome to Character Matters.
Wow, I can't believe I'm on Character Matters. That's awesome.
Welcome.
Thank you, Doctor. You You're the greatest. You're a beacon of light. I can't figure out how to get your program on the live, though.
You can't figure out how to get the program.
Yeah, are people getting it over the internet live? Or on the radio live?
You mean on a broadcast medium?
Yes, sir.
No, we are strictly internet-based.
I'm not smart enough to figure out how to get the stream or whatever.
Well, you're obviously tuned in to this evening.
Well, I wrote down. I got your program off YouTube.
Uh-huh.
The recorded one, and so then I jotted down your number from that, and I was hoping you'd be on tonight.
Uh-huh. Well, welcome.
Just so I could thank you for your work. Yeah. Say, I got a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about treating the character disturbance with neurofeedback?
With neurofeedback.
Yeah, are you familiar with that?
Yeah, there are an awful lot of different methodologies out there. I haven't seen any evidence that whether it's EMDR or neurofeedback or biofeedback or any of the other kind of neuro reprogramming methods, I'm not really convinced that any of those modalities show any real promise when it comes to character disturbance. They can show some effect with some dimensions of character. As I write about, I don't know how familiar you are in my writings about this, but I see personality and character as multidimensional constructs. And part of that is our biology. And, within our biology, there are our temperamental predispositions, our constitution, and our neuropsychological wiring, so to speak. All those contribute to our personality makeup. And so I have seen some evidence that you can at least tend to some aspects of personality, say, for example, somebody's level of impulse control, or their degree of irascibility, or their tendency to become overly anxious, or whatever the case may be. So I've seen I've seen evidence that you can at least modify those aspects of personality. But when you're talking about treating the whole person and really working for character change, I don't see any of those modalities as a magic bullet, so to speak.
Yeah, I went ahead and tried it myself. Based on Dr. Vanderkolk, he recommends it. You probably know who he is.
I do not.
Dr. Basil Vanderkolk, the big, I don't know if he's German or what he is. He's the head psychology guy at Syracuse University.
Not heard of him.
Yeah, he's big, pioneers the, different kinds of personality disorders and such, that kind of stuff. So I went ahead and tried the neurofeedback, and what they told me is that I have a hot spot kind of in the back of my brain, and it makes for hypervigilance and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so they try to kind of cool that down so it kind of lowers your anxiety level.
Mm-hmm.
And it did help me. I think I need to go back, though, because my anxiety's gone back up.
Mm-hmm. Well, see, you're kind of confirming what I just said earlier, and that is when it comes to these particular aspects, these dimensions that make up our personality, for example, hyper-alertness or hypervigilance or anxiety or impulse control difficulty, whatever these dimensions are, there are areas of the brain that are particularly involved in these various dimensions. And I have seen evidence that we can indeed, with some of these methods, really attend to those aspects. But, we're more than just those one aspects of our personality or character. Our character is shaped by a number of influences, not the least of which is our shaping experience and also kind of our ways of thinking about things. That's part of the cognitive behavioral framework, is to understand that the ways we think about things, the attitudes that we form, have a lot to do with the behavior patterns that we exhibit. So, like I say, I have no problems with these methods being able to attend to certain aspects of things, but when it comes to really making substantive character change, there's always more involved. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's it. Well, yeah, it would be nice to have the magic bullet, but it helped me. But I think, one thing that you helped me with is when you pointed out in your book that these character disturbed people don't really have a big problem with anxiety. I thought just because I had such a problem with it that everybody else did too.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, there's some people that really don't have that problem.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, the research is indicating, some of the researchers call this adaptive fearfulness, which means a little bit of hesitation, a little bit of angst, a little bit of uneasiness, a little bit of fear would actually help the person out. It would actually, what we say, give them pause and keep them from doing some of the things that they habitually do that cause a big problem. And so if they had just enough of this anxiety, this adaptive kind of anxiety, they wouldn't be getting into so much trouble. But some folks are actually defined in character by their lack of that kind of anxiety. And it's really hard for people who struggle with anxiety to imagine that there are people for whom anxiety is not a factor at all.
But, looking back, that has to be a big part of the attraction. I'm thinking I've got way too much. I'm naturally going to be attracted to someone with none at all. I don't know.
That sometimes that often does happen. It really does. Yeah. So do you have another question?
Well, I think you pretty well answered it. So,
well, I appreciate you, and I'm glad you found us, and I'm glad that you're familiar with the work. You mentioned character disturbance. Is that the only book or work that you're familiar with?
Yes, I've just read the one, and I just found it recently, and I'm so sorry that it took me 20-some years to find it. My goodness, you could have helped me so much back then.
Well, I appreciate that you have it, and I'm more than edified that it's helped you out.
Well, you've helped a lot of people, Doctor. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Appreciate your call.
Bye now.
Bye-bye. Well, that was a nice call. And I really do appreciate I never can hear enough from folks when they tell me that one of my books or one of the articles has really helped them out. That it's really why I do what I do, and I never get tired of hearing it. But what I was getting into before I took the call earlier is I was talking about this this disturbing incident many years ago with Rodney King, and what I saw at the real root of it that folks were not giving much attention to. And that is this capacity that we have to, in our mind, dehumanize one another. And the reason I feel so strongly about this is because I see it at play in all of the insidious behaviors that are behind so many of the tragedies that we witness today, or that we've heard about and have made news, whether it be terrorist bombings or rogue or unethical law enforcement officials inappropriately using too much force or roughing people up or causing unnecessary death or harm. What I'm witnessing is an increased capacity of individuals to do on their own what military services used to have to do through brainwashing and conditioning during times of war. And that is, get you to think about your enemy in less than human terms. Cast them in a certain way so that you don't have any problems getting rid of them, doing harm. You know, a friend of mine who served in Vietnam talked to me about this one day, about how they were trained, how he was trained to view the enemy as, quote, gooks, end quote, and to basically categorize these folks as subhuman and therefore not worthy of any kind of human regard, and therefore being totally expendable. And also, of course, being hit with the very clear reality that in times of war, you know, it's kill or be killed. And perhaps one of the most damaging things that occurred to this individual when he returned home, I think he had a bit of PTSD. But as part of that, the really disturbing thing is that he had learned so well how to dehumanize, how to distance himself, how to conceptualize others in such a dehumanizing way. He had learned to do that so well that it was all too easy for him to do that with other people in his life, that in any way offended him or bothered him, or that he thought were against him or were not for him enough, or were not likable enough in some way, or whatever the case may be. So, you know, basically in his mind there became only the usable among his acquaintances and the completely expendable. He brought that dehumanizing attitude with him back home. And he treated people accordingly. And it was chilling. It was very chilling. As a matter of fact, I never really completely felt safe in his presence, because I think as a result of the PTSD, there always seemed to be that point at which he would possibly be thrown into a complex and see you as the enemy or as a gook, and then anything at all was possible. And he owned firearms. Not that possessing them is anything that in and of itself is a concern. But given his mental state and his proclivity to see things that way, was always a little unnerving to be around him, especially when he was perturbed about something. And what I'm seeing on a fairly global scale, it doesn't matter what ideology, doesn't matter what hate group, what I'm seeing is this incredible capacity of folks to be indoctrinated with ideologies that basically see others in a way that dehumanizes. You know, there was another one of these so-called honor killings in Pakistan just a couple of days ago. Some lady who had some notoriety in Pakistan as a model, not a role model, but a real life model. That's what she did for a living, modeling. And for that very conservative culture, she was pretty much out there. And doing some risque things. And apparently her brother took it upon himself to restore honor to his family by strangling her to death. Now, one can only imagine what it would be like to take the life of your own sibling. Under normal circumstances, this would be really difficult. But when you have yourself convinced that the person is evil or an infidel, then all of a sudden you have justification. Now, how does all of this, what I said about Rodney King, this incident here, other tragic incidents where people using various ideologies have committed unspeakable crimes, how does this all have to do with the series of articles that I've been writing on the importance of revering and reckoning and admitting the truth? Well, it's this. We are great self-deceivers. Great self-deceivers. We have these baser instincts in us. And one of the instincts that we have in us, especially the male of the species. Now, somebody will say this is sexist, but there's evidence that this comes along both hormonal and genetic lines in predisposition. I'm not saying that you can't have this in women too. Actually, you can. But it takes a little bit more conditioning, generally speaking. Generally speaking. There are exceptions. But we have within us this archetype, this kind of programming. To want to rule, to want to have our will prevail. to seek dominance over others. And here's the real issue with that. We are wired that way, and that's not evil. That's who we are at a baser level. Now, when we know that, and when we own that, and we take care for our own sake and for the sake of everyone else, to face our baser side and our baser instincts, and to work at elevating ourselves into more pro-social creatures, when we do that, we become healthy, functional members of society. When we don't honestly reckon with that side of ourselves, there's always trouble. And when we lie to ourselves, and we have this capacity to really lie. When we lie to ourselves about what we're doing and why, in other words, well, for example, when this man who took his own sister's life lies to himself and says, no, it isn't that I just want to have my will and my way prevail. No, it's not that at all. It's that it's a matter of honor, or it's a matter of faithfulness, or it's a matter of martyrdom, or it's a matter of doing the will of God. When we provide justification for just acting an animal, anything is possible. We are great self-deceivers. Over the years in counseling practice, I've seen many instances, many instances, where couples who have come to the end of a troubled relationship, couples who at one time in their lives thought each other simply hung the moon, and now each one believes that the other is the devil incarnate. It's amazing how that can happen. And they're at war with one another. And they just really want to hurt one another because of the hurt they perceive was caused to them. And then they deceive themselves, sometimes using their children as weapons, sometimes basically inventing a reason to drive wedges where wedges don't really need to be driven, just to get back at one another, because it's really all about the fight between them. Although they lie to themselves and they lie to each other about what their real motive is. They don't honestly own their motives. I've seen this so many times. There's real power in an honest self-reckoning. This was one of the phrases that Bill W., founder of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, was fond of using that phrase, an honest self-reckoning. And I make the point in my books and in my workshops and in several online articles, including the one that I just put out this past Friday, I make the point that this kind of fooling ourselves is not the same thing as what many psychologists and mental health professionals of other disciplines call denial. It's not the same thing at all. Because it's actually pretty conscious what we're doing. Because we want to justify ourselves. We want to justify the action we're taking, even though we know it's a horrendous action. We want to justify in our mind. You know, I'll go back to this example of this honor killing. Within certain cultures, there's a belief that women, especially, need to know their place. And they need to have a particular degree of subordination to certain rules and values and norms. And there's a very, very steep price that they have to pay for challenging those. And unfortunately, in this case, this was a woman who dared to defy those norms in her culture. And her brother was able to justify in his mind the most despicable act of murder by allowing himself to think that it was a matter of honor. Now, you know, we have twisted thinking in our culture as well that predisposes all kinds of horrendous acts. And this is what we've witnessed in some of these brutality cases. There's a certain mindset that some folks with power adopt that allows them to feel entitled to met out the kind of brutal justice they feel matches the injustice that they perceive. I was drawn to a video that got several hits on YouTube of an officer who stopped a young man. In this case, it was a white teenager, or maybe slightly older than I don't know. I think he was in his late teens. And as it turned out, didn't really have a legitimate reason to stop him. And may have even been a case of mistaken identity. But make a long story short, the person was not really actively resisting, but wanted to know why he was stopped and what the offense was that he was being charged with. And the officer copped an attitude. You know, you will be subordinate to me. And of course, you know, we're told you don't resist arrest. But this guy was not truly resisting, just wanting an explanation, and he actually was entitled to. But the officer copped an attitude and then began to taser this guy to the point where his brain went into convulsions and he was, for all intent and purposes, brain dead for a number of seconds because he had seizures. And then the officer was dragging him, and because his body went completely limp, and he became a nuisance, and in his anger, just let him fall, or actually gave him a shove, dropped him. You'd have to see the video. It's just really disturbing. And let him fall face first into the pavement, crushing all of his facial bones in his skull and requiring a good deal of reconstructive surgery and doing permanent brain damage. This kid will never be the same again. And what I'm saying is that these ways that we have of deceiving ourselves about our true motives, there are these power mongers around us. They absolutely do not need to be afforded a badge. Now, I am not casting a broad brush here. I'm not painting with a broad brush. Good officers know who these people are. Good officers know exactly who these people are on the force, for whom power is the objective, who are loose cannons to start with, who have really seriously impaired consciences themselves, and are all about lording their power and authority over somebody else. They know who they are. And there's a code. They won't rat them out. They won't rat them out. But there's a mentality that goes along with this. A really self-deceptive mentality where these folks tell themselves that they're doing the world a favor by ridding the world of riffraff. And as soon as you are able to see another human being that way, then the path is easier to doing the unspeakable. And that was the point, really, of my series of articles. The damage that our lies do, especially the lies that we tell ourselves, the damage is incalculable. There's no such thing as a benign one. These lies do damage. And people of decency, people of integrity, of character, they're the ones that have learned to both revere, admit, and embrace the truth, even when it comes to themselves, especially when it comes to themselves. Maybe you want to weigh in on this topic too. If you do, give us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. Happy to take your call. You know, the series of articles that I'm writing right now is a preview of my fifth and possibly last book. And hopefully it will be out at the end of the summer, tentatively now titled The 10 Commandments of Character, How to Lead a Significant Life. It's a book that I'll be doing with my co-author, Dr. Kathy Armistead, who was my co-author for How Did We End Up Here? And it's a book that I've felt compelled to write for quite some time. and first introduced in the book that the earlier caller mentioned. The character disturbance had the Ten Commandments of character briefly referenced in one chapter, and I call these so-called commandments by that name because they are the 10 essential life lessons that I think people need to learn if they're going to emerge in adulthood as responsible individuals, or if they're going to get their life back on track and be responsible if somehow during adulthood they went astray. So these are the things that my work with children, adolescents, and adults over the many years have told me are the essential lessons that we have to learn to shape up as decent people. And the fourth commandment has to do with revering the truth. And revering the truth is really an interesting concept. You have to have a positive kind of regard for it. You know, there's a saying about some folks who play fast and loose with the truth. Narcissists are very big on doing this. They do this a lot. Because in the mind of the narcissist, reality is what they say it is. In other words, they have so much grandiosity about them. And they have so much expansiveness in their thinking, so much active fantasy. One of the great researchers in this field coined a phrase that describes it, saying, thinking makes it so. In other words, if I think it is a certain way, if I think something is a certain way, then it has to be that way, simply because I think so. No objective kind of checking, just pure subjective reality. If I think something is a certain way, if I think the sky is pink, then the sky is pink. Doesn't matter whether other people say it's blue. If I think it's pink, it's pink. And these are the folks who play fast and loose with the truth. Reality is what they say it is. So they don't really have any reverence for it. In other words, they don't really have that kind of conscientiousness that really wants to be certain, really wants to know, and is open-minded, and wants to objectively verify what the truth is. I know, for example, that when I'm doing preparation for this program, and I'm wanting to talk about some particular topic, and I'm wanting to use an example, like I did earlier about this one incident of police brutality that resulted, unfortunately, in the death of a young man. I want to be sure that I get it right. Sure, I have my opinions about things, but I want those opinions to be well informed and to be well researched and validated. Why? Because I don't want to do harm. I know it would harm. There would be some harm, some negative fallout for me to misrepresent anything. And so I'm very careful. There was another incident that I've been very hesitant to speak about. because I can't, because the way of the circumstances of the case, I can't be sure of all the facts because there's not enough objective evidence. I have my suspicions, but I have to acknowledge them as only suspicions. This would be the case of Freddie Gray. Many of you are familiar with that case. And this is the young man who, according to most of the news reports, was traveling in a police van after an arrest and was not strapped down as he probably should have been, and then was injured and seriously suffered a spinal cord injury and then died. Now, I have watched the tapes of this incident over and over again. And there is no version that I have seen that doesn't begin with the officers picking up this man who has already been handcuffed and dragging him over to the waiting police van. That's where the videos begin. But when I look carefully, as a trained psychologist who has studied neurobiology as part of his training, part of our training in psychology, and I look at this person being basically dragged to the police van. There are some behaviors that they can't escape me. Some observations that I make about what looks to be already present neurological damage somewhere. Because this person even has to have his legs lifted. He's got his head down. He's screaming in pain, and his feet are dragging. They think he's dragging his feet just to be passively resistant, and then being uncooperative, so they basically force him into the van. But what it appears to me, as I look very carefully, is that this individual's spine could very likely have already been injured, especially on the concrete or that rock or that bike rack that was near it before the video starts. We don't have evidence of what happened with the initial takedown. We don't have evidence there, or how that head or neck might have been struck. But when I look very carefully, the damage is already done, and I say to myself, and like I said, I've been hesitant to talk about this because there's just no way to know for sure. But somebody on that team knows exactly what happened. And of course, they're protecting themselves. And they're protecting one another. If we only had reverence for the truth. Many times the truth would have done just fine. But there are always consequences. And most of the time, we're not willing to pay those consequences. You know, the research tells us that we lie for two reasons, primarily. We lie to prevent something we don't like, but fear might happen. We lie to prevent that very thing from happening. And we also lie to help ensure something does happen that we don't think we can acquire by more legitimate, fair means. So those are the two basic reasons we lie. And in this case, I think the officers know that the takedown of this suspect was unnecessarily rough, resulted in an unfortunate snap of the neck and eventual death. A real tragedy. And the second real tragedy is that we will probably never, ever know the truth. That's really the tragedy of our times. That there's so many things that we will never know the truth about. Because as Gregory House, the fictional physician on the series House says, or is famous for saying, everybody lies. There's no regard for the truth anymore. It's all spin. Whether it's coming out of the mouths of politicians or whether it's coming out of those that we hope we can trust to lead us. But we can't really trust them. Because honor, real honor, integrity, character, is one of those bygone values that we just don't seem to cherish very much anymore. And we so enable and we so reinforce bad character in so many ways that it is the prevalent phenomenon of our time, as I mentioned in my books. And it's responsible for all of the problems that we have, all of them. You can't think of an issue that affects us that doesn't ultimately lead back to that. It's a crying shame. And so I hope you'll avail yourself of the series of articles on the blog at manipulative-people.com. This current series on the fourth commandment of solid character development, revering, admitting, reckoning with, embracing the truth. That series will be continuing, at least for the next couple of weeks. I hope you'll avail yourself of it. I hope you'll also avail yourself of my books, In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People, Character Disturbance, The Phenomenon of Our Age, The Judas Syndrome, my first and only book so far that is written primarily for the Christian faith community, and my first book with co-author Kathy Armistead, How Did We End Up Here? And at the end of the summer, my next book with her should be coming out, The 10 Commandments of Character. And I'll be with you again next week for another edition of Character Matters. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Dr. George Sand. Good night.